Hello and welcome. My name is Meepolis, they, she, he, and this is Literally Graphic. And today we're looking at Queer, a Graphic History by Meg-John Barker and Julia Scheele, published by Icon Books in 2016. This is a reread for me, but if I made a video about it previously, I don't really remember. It is no longer live. So I knew I had to revisit it for my next A to Z of Queer Lit recommendations video. Content notes for some discussion of queer phobia, nudity, and sex. For a full biography of either Meg-John Barker or Julia Scheele, please refer back to my review of Gender, a Graphic Guide, which they also teamed up on. What kinds of keywords came to mind? History, academia, gay, pop culture analysis, and of course, queer. The synopsis on Goodreads is, quote, activist academic Meg-John Barker and cartoonist Julia Scheele illuminate the histories of queer thought and LGBTQ plus action in this groundbreaking nonfiction graphic novel. From identity politics and gender roles to privilege and exclusion, Queer explores how we came to view sex, gender, and sexuality in the way that we do, how these ideas get tangled up with our culture and our understanding of biology, psychology, and sexology, and how these views have been disputed and challenged. Along the way, we look at key landmarks which shift our perspective of what's normal, Alfred Kinsey's view of sexuality as a spectrum, Judith Butler's view of gendered behavior as a performance, the play Wicked, or moments in Casino Royale when we're invited to view James Bond with the kind of desiring gaze usually directed at female bodies in mainstream media. Presented in a brilliantly engaging and witty style, this is a unique portrait of the universe of queer thinking, end quote. Another one of those, is it really a comic or just an illustrated books? I would say it does lean a bit more towards the latter, but I can't complain. The more memorable images, diagrams, and breaking down of pages of text people do to nonfiction books, the better, in my humble opinion. The way they introduce headings on each page also made the book very easy to pick up randomly and browse as well. In contrast to the official summary, and backed up by page 1, I would say this is largely a book explaining academic theories and how it intersects with popular culture, making more obvious the water that we swim in, as it were. And while some activist groups are covered, it felt like the book still mostly focuses on their ideas rather than touching on events. Not necessarily a bad thing, but something I wanted to note. I am left wondering, what about this book would change if it was published now? It only came out in 2016, but a lot of things about queerness has changed since then. Not to mention that Judith Butler has come out as non-binary. On the positive side, in covering some of the more problematic aspects of the history of queer theory, I did appreciate that Meg-John is able to outline some of their historical influences while still highlighting criticisms. That said, sometimes it felt like things were presented as universal but are not universal. Not unusual, but something ideally to be avoided, I think. They also assert that queer is something you do rather than what you are, which comes in a section where I think Meg-John is trying to emphasize being open to fluidity and change in our sexual identity rather than rigidly holding on to labels, but can also come across as judgmental if you come at this book feeling like you aren't living your 100% queer self at times. I also felt like the term identity politics could have probably been nixed entirely. I am aware of the debate about whether it is better for people to identify as specifically lesbian, gay, bisexual, or trans, etc., or to all come in under the queer umbrella. Personally, I think we can have both, but I'm not surprised that people who write books about queer theory might have a preference. That said, identity politics is a buzzword that has lost almost all meaning. The LGBT plus community is only a small facet of how people identify, and I'm not sure why, if I ID as queer, as I do, how that removes me from identity politics. As I'm still IDing as different from the assumed majority, even if I'm giving myself more theoretical room to explore my identity. I had forgotten that Meg-John positions transcendentalists as pre-queer theorists of sorts. Interesting, but I'm not sure I can come to any conclusions on whether that is good or bad. They do keep coming up in my rambling studies, though, in both positive and negative ways, so I should probably try and hyperfixate on them sometime. Looking at diversity, or the lack thereof, gender and sexuality seem pretty well represented in the illustrations and figures cited. Race saw some obvious diversity as well, although the very dramatic black and white art style did feel a bit aggressively white at times. Because of the strong focus on theory and academic figures, the book does feel at times to be a bit disconnected from the experience of poor and working class queer people. Obviously, the choice in format is trying to make these ideas more accessible to everyone. Not really a balance, but okay, I guess. As the book goes on, the disability representation went in some directions. There was significant wheelchair user representation and some mobility cane rep. We also get a page that outlines the basic ideas of crip theory. I am not the final judge on if it is proportionally enough or anything, but it did surpass the very low standard of the average. To conclude, as someone who has not studied these things academically, I do continue to appreciate this book. It's a great way to make a list of things to look more into more in depth. I'll be settling on 3 out of 5 stars this time around. Bye all, keep reading, and organized end capitalist oppression. And as always, Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.